right, gang. Welcome aboard once again for the weekly Mac Forum video chat. Hope that you've had a good week and found a lot of interesting Mac things going on. We have quite a bit jammed into the show tonight. Not much in the way of tips and tricks, but quite a bit in the way of forum roundup and a few other things. So let's get right into it. First of all, welcome to our newest member, as of when I checked a few minutes ago. That was I Love My Cats. Interesting screen name. And I misread it initially when I was doing the show prep. So welcome to them and to all our new members. For those of you that are just lurking, please feel free to join. If you want to ask a question, that's the way to do it. Is to come in, join, be a part of the show. It doesn't cost you anything to join and be a part of the forum. And you might find some interesting information along the way. All right, so let's get right into the forum roundup. Just a highlight of some of the things that came up this week. First of all, forum administrator Nick reminded us that there is a screen repair program that's been extended until October 16th of this year to cover some situations on some MacBooks and MacBook Pros that have some reflective coating issues. Apple will replace Retina displays on certain eligible models going back as far as June of 2012. And the program extends until October 16th of this year, or within 3 years of the original purchase date, whichever is the longest. So if you have a screen, this is an example of what one of it might look like. If you have one of these screens, for some people this is going to extend over and above the 3-year warranty period if you've gotten the extended AppleCare warranty. So if you have one of these models that might be affected, you might want to do some digging and ask a few questions and see if your particular model is one that is covered. This does happen from time to time where Apple will extend warranty programs for specific issues beyond the 3-year period. So if you have one of these screens that has this kind of look to it, it might be worth checking out. Next, this is a thread I am hesitant to jump into, and I haven't. I have been kind of reading. It's dealing with the issue of batteries and charging, and whether it is best to leave the MacBook or MacBook Pro on electrical current when it's not, when you don't, and only use the battery when you need to, or whether you need to periodically run it down to a certain level just to recalibrate the battery monitoring circuitry. This has turned into quite a debate, and Apple's recommendations have changed over the years based in part on changes to the type of battery being used. As you know, if you've been around electronic devices for a while, you know that there were some types of batteries that have a sort of a memory effect. If they're not discharged properly periodically, then they don't hold the charge as long as they did initially. The current crop of Mac laptops, or I should say notebooks rather, that'd be a more appropriate term these days because they run warm enough that you probably don't want them sitting in your lap. But these are now using lithium-ion configurations in their batteries, and there's some discussion on whether it would be better to deep discharge them, not deep discharge them, etc., etc., etc. So if you want to take a look at that debate, there's some disagreement. I think there are some links to some helpful information there. It's a good one to follow and keep an eye on. Also in our forum roundup this week is a discussion of recovering files from a time capsule. This one is has to do with recovering files in a multiple user situation. Okay, someone could not see their entire list of files. These were files that were stored on a time capsule. And essentially, the problem is that when you go to look at files on a time capsule, and you're looking at a time machine backup, you've got to make sure that you know which user you're logged in as. If you have guest login enabled on the time capsule and you log in as guest, you're not going to be able to see all of the files. You won't be able to see a file unless it's been tagged as everyone. So this discussion might be helpful to some of you. Also this week, I'm going to move on. This link I got from a forum thread. My apologies to whomever provided it, because I don't have the listing right now of the thread that it came from. But this is an overview of the Apple hardware test program. The Intel-based Macs in particular have the ability to run something called Apple hardware test that does some testing of the internal structure of the machine to see if there are logic board issues and other circuitry type issues. And this is a description of what the test can tell you, how to enable it under certain circumstances. You can get some information here as well. On this tells you how to put it on a USB stick and be able to run it. As you can see, they've got information for different Mac models through the years, and it gives you some indication of some of the codes that you might see and what they mean. So this is a pretty helpful, this has the potential to be helpful to you, has quite a bit of information about the Apple hardware test program, so it might be something that you want to take a look at and find out more if you find yourself troubleshooting either your Mac or others. I've been rather fortunate in not having to run Apple hardware tests very often, but sometimes the code that's generated by some of these diagnostic programs can be a little cryptic. You might find this helpful to you. All right, let's move into some of the other news and information this week. This one came from the Register. I saw this. I think the initial link I got from Kirk McLaren's website, but I linked to the full article. As you can see, it's Sean Nichols at the Register. And this is, some of the tech industry apparently thinks that the tech journalists are being, as the headline says, as you can see, too mean. Now, I kind of have a problem with this concept. It kind of reviews things a little bit and says, in the beginning of the tech industry did quite a bit to promote the industry. Tech journalists did quite a bit to promote the industry and talk about the benefits of technology. Whereas more recently, some of the tech journalists have been a little more critical of the industry in terms of discussing some of the drawbacks and downsides of technology. Now, personally, I don't mind that the tech journalists are being more critical of the industry, as long as they're not being unnecessarily critical. In other words, I think it's perfectly legit to discuss some of the drawbacks of the newer technology. Okay? For example, just one of the drawbacks that I think is a legit discussion to have is the fact that some of these new features that our smart devices bring to us carry with it a certain what's the word I'm looking for here? There's a certain diminution of privacy. In other words, in exchange for getting this cool new feature, you have to give some information over to a provider, and you're relying on them to be careful with what they do with that information. This I think is going to become more and more of an issue, not just because of computers, but because as we get more and more of these internet-enabled devices, for example, privacy is going to be compromised in ways that some people would not have thought of. I mean, for example, I read a while back about someone thinking that one of the ways that you could do things these days would be internet-enabled refrigerator, so that when you ran out of milk, for example, you scan the barcode, the refrigerator builds up a list that you need milk, and at a certain predetermined time, the list gets sent off to the grocery store. And if the store wanted to provide that service, they could pre-package that stuff for you, and all you had to do was pick it up. That was one of the suggestions that you could do with these internet-enabled refrigerators. Or, for example, there's one now that allows you to, if I'm not mistaken, from what I can see of their commercial, allows you to use your smartphone to take a picture of the interior of the fridge while you're at the grocery store, so you can see, do I have milk, or do I have this, that, or the other. When you give up that kind of information, now that seems trivial, okay? But if somebody can aggregate that information and start analyzing what you buy, that tells them a great deal about you, some of which you might not want people to know. And I don't necessarily mean whether you're doing anything illegal or immoral here. I'm talking about levels of information that you might not be comfortable with some third party figuring out. I've told people for a long time that if they were willing to provide about 5 pieces of information, somebody could guess with a reasonable degree of accuracy what your income level was. Okay? If you look at the spam that you get sometimes, for example, notice that there's a pattern to some of it. I mean, some of it is just junk, and they're sending it out in hopes that you'll bite on it. But there's some that is very highly targeted marketing. And this is based on information that is readily available, that people have been able to glean. If someone is selling, for example, a luxury car, they're going to send email and correspondence about that luxury car to people who have a profession and an income level where they think you might be interested in buying that car. They're not going to send it to someone who is making minimum wage working at the Mickey D's. It's a waste of their time. Now, how did they get that information? Well, there's all kinds of different ways that you can get it, one of which is some of the sites that ask you for personal information, such as demographic information, then turn around and sell that information off to other third parties. So that's just one example of how this kind of information is used. Numerous websites have trackers embedded on them. If you don't believe me, install a program such as Ghostery, which identifies these trackers and tell you what they are, and you'll see. For example, if I reload this page, okay, I'm going to reload it real quick, and there in the bottom corner in the purple is the Ghostery listing of some of the things that are on this website. On some sites, that's trackers, and this pops up on all of the sites too. These are the things that it's blocked. On other sites, it's more noticeable. There are quite a few more of them. So These guys aren't just putting that stuff there just for fun. Okay, it's gathering information about every hit that comes to that site. Um, all right, this is another one from the Register again. Now, I have a little bit of a quibble with the headline for this article. It says, on the last day as president, Obama's CIO, Chief Information Officer for the federal government, shrouds future.gov websites in secret code. Now, the headline makes it sound like there's some sort of conspiracy going on here. When you read the article a little more closely, the bulk of the article is talking about the possibility that future United States government websites filed under the .gov domain and under certain subdomains would be required to use more secure protocols such as HTTPS than they have previously used. Now, to me, I don't get the implication that this is necessarily a bad thing. I mean, when you look at the amount of information that is transacted over the internet these days, both with the federal government and with other agencies, using a more secure protocol for all this information seems to me like a pretty good idea. So I included that just to give you an idea of where policy seems to be going. I do think that as we move along and the general public becomes a little more concerned about security, you're going to see more and more of these domains insisting that you have higher levels of security, using higher levels of security. And because of that, if you're running older web browsers in particular, you're going to have to make some updates if you want to run those sites. And in the case of Safari, where the update, the web browser update is tied primarily to OS updates, that's going to mean that some of these older versions of Safari won't work on certain sites. So you're going to have to keep an eye on that, particularly if you're running older versions. And it's going to, over time, affect all web browsers. So if you've got an older machine that can't run newer browsers, over time that's going to become an issue for you as the security protocols in various websites get amped up. So that's something to keep an eye on. These kinds of decisions tend to affect all of us as internet users eventually. All right, next I have here, this is from Kirk the iTunes guy, our old buddy Kirk McLaren, in his Macworld article for this week. He's talking about some things that iTunes cannot do. Now, Kirk, one of the reasons I like reading Kirk, and particularly reading his columns, is that quite frequently his columns are focused on how do you do something that you think you cannot do. Well, in this particular article, he's talking about some things that iTunes just flat cannot do at the moment. And some of them are for the iTunes version that's on your Mac, and some of them are for iTunes on your phone. I'm going to show you one just to give you an example of something that you cannot do at the moment. One of Kirk's users, as you can see, I've got my iTunes in web browser in the album cover mode, where it shows me album covers. And if I scroll over one of these covers and hover there, you get a little play button. And when you hit that play button, it generally starts whatever is behind there to play. And one of Kirk's regular readers wanted to know if you can stop iTunes from putting that marker up there. You can't. I thought that maybe you could, but I have not I hadn't found a way to do it, and Kirk says you can't do it, and he knows way more about iTunes than I do, so I'll take him at his word. He mentions several other things that you can't do with iTunes. I thought you might find it kind of interesting. Um, there's always a move afoot by some users to replace iTunes with other music players, and I'm sure there are some out there, if this is an important feature to you, that would allow you to do that and not have that player pop up. But anyway, he has several things in this column, in this week's column, that you cannot do with the existing incarnation of iTunes. It's worth a look, just kind of as an interesting read. And then finally, for this week's show, I ran into something. I saw this initially on Kirk's website, followed a link to a couple of guys, and then this discussion. This is the version I linked to is Rob Griffiths over at his site, the Robservatory. I've read him before, and I used to read him quite a bit when he was over at the old Mac OS X Hint site, which I still miss. It made me look like a genius on numerous occasions uh, because some tip that I found that worked and did something really weird, I could then pass on to other users. But this particular article I mentioned because it deals with an issue about the hidden library folder under Sierra. As some of you know, your user folder is hidden under Sierra. The library folder that's inside your user folder is hidden. And in the past, if you held down the Option key, you could bring up the library folder easily if you held down the Option key in certain circumstances. Well, this article is discussing the fact that for some users, that function seemed to have gone away with the current incarnation of Sierra and replaced it with a key that has that uses the Shift key as a shortcut. Well, apparently that's still kind of up in the air. Some users report that on their installation, the Option key version still works. On others, some are reporting that it doesn't work, but if you use the Shift key, it still works. So you might want to take a look at this article if you're having trouble using that shortcut. There's a decent probability here that this may be a bug in current incarnations, or at least in 10.12.3. So that's something to keep an eye out for in the coming week. If you run into that problem, I just thought it was kind of weird that you're getting two different sets of behavior on different machines. Certainly there's something going on there that needs to be checked out a little bit more. And that's going to just about do it for this week's set of info for the show. I do want to mention one or two things. First of all, last week I mentioned that I had been working on a automator workflow that would, once you've taken a screenshot with the built-in key commands, would take that screenshot and then shrink it down to a certain size, and if necessary, change the file type. I've gotten those workflows just about working the way I want them. It really didn't take long, but I didn't include them in this week's show because I want to do just a tad bit more testing. I'll show you something real quick. As you can see from my desktop, I've got the workflows right here. There's one, and I've got another one tucked away here, out of the way. There's the other one. And I'm going to run these through a little bit more testing. and I will probably have a short video clip up tomorrow that talks about how to do this in Automator and give you some tips on how to put this to use. It might be handy for those of you that upload a lot of screenshots to different websites. The one that I've built gives you a means of changing both the screen size, the screenshot size in terms of pixels, and also changes the format. As you know, the current format for desktop screenshots is PNG. Well, a lot of services that you might want to upload to look for JPEGs. And this particular automated workflow takes care of that for you, and also gives you an opportunity to set the file parameters, size parameters as well. I've got one version that basically looks at where you put the file, and then you just drop that file onto the little droplet, and it does the rest for you. I'm going to make a version that I'm working on tonight here. I need to do a little bit of testing with. That's why I haven't done the video yet. I'm going to do a version that basically has a watch folder. When you drop screenshots into that folder, they would then get resized, and the new or resized version of the screenshots would be in one folder, and your originals would be in a different one, and it wouldn't really require any intervention on your part as far as dropping them in. Once they go into that folder, the thing would work automatically, ask you what size you want the screenshot to, and you're done. So I'll work on that a little bit. I plan to have that up probably sometime tomorrow, maybe by Tuesday. Stay tuned for that. I'll post a message up when I get that up, and I'll let everybody know. I'll also put a note in the Mac Forums show thread, in the Sunday video chat thread, and wherever else I think is relevant. Hopefully you'll find those helpful. I think I'm going to do just a real quick tutorial on Automator to go along with that, because I know some of you have not used it, so I'll have that for you as well. Probably tomorrow, certainly by Tuesday. If it doesn't get done by Tuesday, it's not going to happen before next weekend. I can tell you that. Looking at the way things are this week, if I don't get it done by Tuesday afternoon, early afternoon on Tuesday, it will not happen until sometime on the weekend. So keep an eye out for that. That's going to do it for me for this week with the Mac Forum video chat. I hope that you found this interesting, and I've certainly enjoyed bringing the information to you. I'll have links to all of this information in the show notes. The show notes will go up probably in about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. This time it's going to take me a little bit of time this week to type up the summaries, because I didn't do that ahead of time as I usually do. So keep an eye out for those. I'll let you know when those go up. And as I say, the Automator video should go up probably sometime tomorrow. Certainly no later than Tuesday. If you don't see it by Tuesday, it just means that things got a little more hectic than I anticipated, and then in that case it won't show up until the weekend. So until next Sunday, this has been Sylvester Rock, your host, aka Sly Dude on the forum. And if you have a question, post it in the Mac Forum show notes in the thread, in the show thread there, in the video chat thread, and I'll try to answer it if I can. If you've got a suggestion for a topic that you'd like to see us discuss, I think I'm going to start gradually moving to a more topic-oriented type of show. So if you've got an interest in something that you would like to see us discuss, please let me know, and I'll be glad to take a look at it and let you know what's coming up. So until next week, this has been your host, Sylvester Roth. I will see you in the forum, guys.